So, welcome everybody to Talks on Tuesdays. And we're glad you're here. We appreciate your being with us today. And for those of you who are watching later on YouTube, be sure to like us and subscribe and comment. And I'm Barbara Solomon. I'm here with Julie Stone, Mary Chase, Chelsea Rittens. We're the rotating hosts, and our guests are Renee, Durin, and Yolanda for now. And we like to talk about a variety of different topics that are kind of on the realm of spiritual and metaphysical and kind of esoteric topics. So today I titled it The Brain, the Mind, and Consciousness, and how it all kind of connects up in the intersectionality of it all. And I thought, well, what brought me to that topic was I was reading the latest copy of Scientific America and came upon a an article that's titled "Brains Produce Thoughts Surprisingly Slow," and that kind of piqued my interest. So started reading it. It starts out with how a well-known billionaire entrepreneur who shall remain nameless was so bothered by what he called the bandwidth problem that one of his long-term goals was connecting his brain up to a computer so that he could process things so slow or quickly, unencumbered by the slow speed of speaking or writing. And so they did some research around that to see if you can hook up your brain to a computer and how it would affect um, the brain processing. And oh, I see. Hi, Louis, Trace, and Gardy. Cecilia, welcome. We're talking about the connection between the brain, the mind, and consciousness. And so the thought was if you can connect up your brain to a computer, could you process things faster? And the research came up that, alas, at this point anyway, you cannot. That the brain makes decisions at a fixed, excruciatingly slow speed of about 10 bits per second. In contrast, human sensory systems gather data at about 1 billion bits per second. So even if you don't know what a bit is, you know that there's a big discrepancy. And I thought that that was interesting and how these scientists did the research, but they didn't really address consciousness in any of that. And that how they were looking at things from a very kind of close up and finite perspective, which isn't surprising because that's what a lot of people do. But how I was thinking about that and started thinking about Donald Hoffman and his perspective of uh, the brain, time, space, consciousness, and how everything is so interconnected a little bit differently than maybe what these scientists are looking at. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about that today. And thinking about Donald Hoffman brought me to one of the things that he talks about that is maybe my favorite thing from him, and that is how we could do a little experiment, and we can all do this right now. And those of you who are watching later at home can do this also. But just take a moment and just kind of take a deep breath and just get centered and focus. And then think about your favorite fruit. And imagine your favorite fruit, whatever it is, get a vision of it and enjoy looking at the color and thinking about the pleasure it brings you. And then imagine yourself taking a bite of this fruit. If it has to be peeled or cut, it's already done. And just take a big bite of that fruit and feel the texture of it on your tongue and imagine the taste and the juice. And
Mhm.
and enjoy it. And then we can come back to this reality and think about how pleasurable that was, envisioning that, really experiencing it, and yet knowing that if the scientists were to cut open our brain at that moment when we were doing that experiment, they would not have found a piece of fruit inside our brain. And yet that's kind of where all those thoughts came from. So I just want to put this out there and see, what does this make you think about? So let's jump in and share. Mary, go ahead.
One of the first things that occurred to me was, why would anybody want us to think any faster than the way we do currently? Don't we get into a lot of trouble by thinking too fast and reacting too fast? I think it's just fine to go slow. And then with thinking of the fruit, there are kinds of thinking. That seems to be more to me a kind of remembering rather than thinking in terms of processing something. So even though we have simple terms for each of these subtopics today, they're pretty complex. And it boggles, which is, I guess, a kind of thinking too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's fun. And even remembering, where does that come from? Is it our brain? What's the connection between our brain, our thoughts, and our consciousness, What's okay, Julie, what do you think? And
I
I'm not
just
saying there's any right or wrong answers. I'm just saying.
no. What came to my mind, and this whole thing about brain and consciousness and the interconnection of something is totally confusing for me. But what I what I thought of, it's sensory, you know, is when I did it, I chose my peach, and I mean, it was like I could feel the peach. The juice running at the color of it, everything. It was more of a sensory sort of reaction or experience. So yeah, I don't know. It came from my brain as a memory, but at the same time, it created this sensory experience, which for me is kind of odd. I don't work real well with visualization, but it was really very potent for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's just what came up for me.
Right.
Sensory.
Yolanda, go ahead. Yeah, thanks, Jules. Yeah, Yolanda, go ahead.
Well, as far as the brain has a real working physiological for how it works, the neural networks.
Mhm.
And if there's blocks in those pathways from the right to the left brain or the processing centers, then your thinking can become slower because it's not connecting. So I'm always thinking that it's kind of good to get a good brain tune up to see if pathways are open. Letting go of the past, there's a foundation on that. Emotional connections, is that pathway blocked? And just the right and left communication and organization. But that to me is one of the things that people really need to kind of take a look at, because it can be corrected, because the neural networks are electrical, and pathways can be corrected within 30 seconds when you find out what's blocked. And I'm talking about this because I've been doing this work since 2006, working with a lot of people, children, ADHD people, ADHD adults. And it's kind of remarkable. And it's just a real non-invasive type of technique
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because I think that you're right. I mean, I've been working with Yolanda, and I've definitely benefited. But what we do is energetic, and we're like remote, doing this remotely, and yet it's energetic, and it's so fascinating. So, what do you think about? And we'll get some other people because we've got some other hands up. But it's the energetics of all that I find curious. So. Uh, I don't know. You want to just give a quick little recap on that and then we can move on, or do you want to wait and let other
Oh,
people
the
share?
electromagnetic energy, you mean? That there's
Yeah, just again, it's like, is it like the cosmic consciousness that we're working with, or how do you see that?
you're working with the brain processes, the memory, the
Hmm.
hippocampus, the limbic system, where their fears are stored in the amygdala, the eyes. Is the brain really connecting to what you're seeing? Are you hearing? Is the brain hearing? And that's a real physiological thing. So
Yes, yeah. So,
if that's all on board and balanced, then people will be able to perceive or connect to this consciousness and a lot better and be able to recognize that that's the key of why I'm doing this, so people can have that ability to process their experience and their consciousness and pick up things and you know
okay, okay. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. It's fun.
yeah.
Okay, Doreen, you were next. Thanks, Yolanda.
Yeah, Mary, I'm with you. I have no desire to hook my brain up to a computer. I also have no desire for any human brain to be hooked up to a computer or animal, for various reasons. But yeah, I feel like I'm going fast enough. Any faster, I'm gonna malfunction. And so one thing with the discussion is I'm getting myself a little bit hung up on the semantics and like what are we defining as a brain and what are we defining as a mind? Because I think a couple times I heard the word brain used, but I think you meant mind. Because obviously the brain is the same thing as an ankle or a femur bone. It's a piece of our body. That's it. So if our consciousness leaves,
Hmm.
there's nothing there. The brain doesn't generate anything. Um, and that's a whole nother tangent too. I mean, Barbara, I think you mentioned the scientist said that humans generate thoughts in their brains, and I'm wondering if that's actually true. Um, and I guess the more interesting comment I wanted to make was in working with people whose quote unquote brains and minds don't work quite the way we would call optimal. And so what am I relating to? Um, if someone's brain and mind aren't optimal, then are thoughts even part of the what's important in the connection? Maybe more specifically, I would say, if I'm working with someone whose brain isn't optimal, with my mind, I have to override that. I have to go, okay, no matter what thoughts they say, it's sort of chaos. I'm just in the presence of chaos, really. Um, and quite honestly, I in that experience, because I do work with people whose minds and brains are not optimal anymore. Um, that experience has been really interesting for me because it's good for my immune system. And the reason I say that is I realize that no matter who I encounter, even if they do have a brain that is quote unquote optimal, often they seem chaotic to me anyway, because we're not in the same consciousness. We see things very differently. However, I can still receive them in consciousness. And that's where I sort of process everybody now. And I'm more comfortable sort of going, yeah, whoever I encounter is going to be chaotic to me because I have my own way of seeing life, and it's not going to be like anybody else's.
Yeah.
I'm still playing around with that because it's a really interesting and new idea and perspective for me, but definitely along the lines of what we're talking about today and how we sort of relate to each other.
Yeah. So with that perspective of, I see everybody realizing that they're all a little different than my perspective. Do you find that you're taking a little bit of a further back vision also, instead of being just so close up and so physical and finite and all that, that you're able to kind of step back a little bit more and look at more of an overview? Because that's kind of what I'm
Yeah,
hearing. I'm thinking that,
yeah, I think Barbara, I think that's a pretty good way to articulate it. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm going to keep working with it because it sort of helps me be on the planet right now. Because all of us are witnessing things and just going, God, that's chaos.
yeah,
I do what, how do I even deal with that? And does it matter if the person is quote unquote optimally functioning or not? It's still kind of chaos, and I can still open my heart. My heart can still be open, and I can connect with them in ways that I'm just not even aware of, and that I don't, in the more in the what I don't know part of our consciousness, as opposed to my brain or my mind.
yeah.
That makes
Nice. And
sense.
I'm glad you brought up the connecting with your heart, because that's actually so much of being in touch, I think, with that bigger consciousness or something. So, Charles, go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. I had one comment, but I wanted to mention something on the topic that Doreen was talking in. Um, when we, for me, if we when we think of brain, um, I do think maybe there is a connection that we can go from brain to ankle, because I think we have stuff of the brain in our heart and stuff of the brain in our gut. And so that leads me to kind of go that there's probably a little bit of brain in every cell. And so that's probably brain is just the physical. But back to the larger topic, when you asked us to think of our favorite fruit, um, that for me is a certain fruit. And we all have likes and dislikes in this lifetime. And I often wonder, because sometimes I I often wonder where those likes and dislikes really come from, because a lot of my likes and dislikes don't seem to come from my upbringing and my environment. It's just particular, and I often wonder why it is that we have these collections of sometimes odd, sometimes normal, but likes and dislikes that we bring in from the larger, more conscious area of ourself. But yeah, um, and so how do we intersect those two? It's kind of like, um, I don't know. For me, it just kind of, the needle is just really going more towards the consciousness side in origin and trueness of what we experience.
Wow. Well, thanks, Charles. I mean, a lot to think about, and I love your comments about, yeah, where do we get those likes and
Right.
dislikes? That's definitely
Yeah.
food for thought. So, Cecilia, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted, sis.
I did Louis raised her hand first, and then Julie did, and then so I can be third after that.
Oh gosh, okay. I didn't see either one of you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Louis, I saw you waving.
Okay, Louis Trace, go ahead.
Just the other day, I read an article about scientists that was doing experiments. And they did it on two ways. They do the experiment without anybody watching at the experiment. And then they get a certain results. And then they do it while they are watching it, and it was a complete different results. Now, one thing that I have learned I was always busy with other things except to practice my piano lessons. And at night time, I would take the book in my mind and I would practice, man, practice. And it was wonderful. My teacher could never understand how efficiently I am with my little practice that she know of.
Yeah.
So I have definitely used my mind to do things while I am with closed eyes and things. And another thing that is very important that I try to bring out to everybody, and especially where there's young children, give it to the left hand, to the right hand. Because I have learned I am quite good with flower arrangements. And being a Taoist, we do always for full moon and half moons ceremonies, flower decorations. But the one side must be a mirror of the other one. It took me about 6 months before I could train my mind perfectly to have the left side exactly as the right side.
Wow.
And that was for me, wow, I didn't realize how neglected that one part of my brain was. And once that opened, I can say I see life different. I see everything in a different perspective. And I definitely think, as Chelsea say, there is a little bit of brain in everything. I like that and I agree with that.
Nice. Yeah, great. Well, thanks. That's a nice share. Thank you. Let's see, Julie, were you next? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember what it is that I wanted to share, or I think it was I wanted to sort of confirm or say that I understood what Doreen was talking about, and then I think you, Barbara, said, and about it's about the interconnection between the brain, or intersection, I mean, between the brain and the consciousness. And I was thinking, well, it sort of sometimes starts in the brain, like Durin was saying, stepping back from people, and let it go to your more to your consciousness, or your inner awareness, that kind of thing, and let it flow that way, as a way more of a way of communication, like a vibrational communication, or a sensory or feeling. What is that term that Jillian always uses?
Oh, yeah.
Sense. What is it? Anyone that can think of?
Felt.
Felt sense. Felt sense. That's
Oh,
it.
felt.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Interesting. Okay.
is more maybe of a consciousness rather than the brain, but the brain maybe started and then it flows down. I don't know. So that's what I wanted. I think something like that I wanted to say. So
Okay. Thanks.
you've got the floor, Cecilia.
Well, actually, before you jump in, Cecilia, let me just
Oh.
quickly read what Gordy wrote in the chat. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
because it almost goes a little bit with what Julie was saying. I like Rupert Spire's comments on this step back from the thinking mind and see events that are taking place. So kind of observe. They're not happening to you, they're just happening. Your reaction is controlled by you. And yeah, thanks. That's kind of, um, well, anyway, maybe it's some of that felt sense, that knowing. Go ahead, Cecilia. You can.
Oh,
You've got the floor now.
but I was gonna share a little bit, but I first wanted to go back to Julie's cat. For a while there, your cat was just sitting with a half eye, just looking at us with the one eye. I was entranced by that. I was just
Oh,
hypnotized by your cat's eye.
he's got such a
Cute.
big head. You know?
It was adorable.
Yes, that was a great shot.
But anyway, but I just want to go back to things are changing all the time. Like you say, Chelsea, there's a bit of brain in every bit of you, every cell. But I'm going back to the fruit because as you were talking about the fruit and you pick your favorite fruit, and all of a sudden I went to mangoes, and then you said to bite into it. I was like, I wouldn't bite into a mango. I would get to apples, and then you said the juice. I was like, they're not so juicy. I went to strawberries, then I went to blueberries. Like, oh my God, I found these great blueberries just recently. It's like my fruit kept changing as you kept going on the description. It was like going, no, now it's this, now it's that, now it's. But that's how your mind is. Your consciousness will go where it needs to go. And as my fruit kept changing, that's how it was like, as you kept describing more, it's like, no, now it's this, now it's that, now it's these. So it's just go with it, flow with it, enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. A little fruit salad there. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because all of those things that we think about, they seem so real, whether they're memories or I mean, who knows what we want to call them. And yet they seem very real to us, or they can. And yet again, like I was saying, if somebody cut into your brain, it wouldn't be there. There wouldn't be a piece of fruit or, fruit salad or whatever there. And yet, where is it that coming from? And I know like if you look at the brain with a functional MRI machine and it shows where the blood flow goes, and which area is lighting up when you're thinking about different things. But what does that mean? And how does that even work? So, yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating. But Mary, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, for me, the brain is a lot like the CPU in a computer. It's the hardware. It doesn't care. It doesn't have anything. It's just gonna make things happen in this body. Um, and in a computer, we also have a monitor, and we've got the information that we put into it. But out there, we've also got the internet, which we have all created together. And that's kind of like consciousness. And it all kind of flows together. And we need the CPU, we need this processing organ because we're in bodies. But we all know from reading about near death experiences that people still observe things, understand language, even when they are flatlined. So I think that division of consciousness studies at University of Virginia is doing a lot of work on this about how it is possible that this disembodied spirit floating over the hospital sees a red tennis shoe on the roof. That turns out later, yeah, there's a red tennis shoe up there. It's just so mysterious and juicy. About.
Yeah. Yeah, these are fun things to talk about. And I agree with you that the brain is kind of the mechanism. And but getting it how it stays connected and gathers all the information and processes it, and like what Yolanda was saying is the work that she does to reintegrate some of that. It's just fascinating. And another thing that I thought goes along a little bit with this topic, and then I'll get to you, Chelsea, is this other article at the end of the magazine, and it talked about thinking without words. And some scholars used to believe that you had to know language in order to have thoughts. And I read that, and it's like, really? I mean, you look at like into it in the eyes of an infant or a dog, I mean, they're so expressive. And they may have some sort of language, but
Right.
not what we consider language. I don't think they're pretty, even though, barking may have different nuances,
Mhm.
but they're thinking. I mean, you can see those little gears turning. So, and then of course, it went on to say scientists realize that that's not the case after all. So, and that's not like I know more than anybody else, but to me, that just seems so intuitively wrong that you have to have language to be able to have thoughts.
Mhm.
But anyway, so go ahead, Chelsea. What's your share?
Oh, I was just interrupting you because I missed the first part of what you said. What was the premise you were exploring?
Oh, what was this article? It
No,
says
I
thinking
mean just
without
now in
words.
that last comment you just said about in what you just said a minute ago,
Unknown caller.
What did I just say? Oh, about how if you look at an animal or an infant and they're nonverbal, I mean, a baby can't sit there and speak to you, but you know that they're thinking, you can see the gears turning and there's stuff going on in there, whether they can articulate it to you or not, there's something. And so, and then the research actually showed that belief is not correct, that you can have thoughts without language. So, and earlier, like Darun was talking about people who are impaired, with brain damage or whatever, they may not be able to speak, but that, there's something going on. So that's kind of what I was sharing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to hear what you had to said, but like I blanked out on the first part of it. So I'm glad you repeated it for me.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any other
Um,
thoughts? Oh, go ahead.
oh, I just kind of wanted to chime in shortly. One more thing, I kind of just on my first comment said, I don't know why we come in with our preferences, why is it that I don't like the taste of butter even probably even before I even tasted butter? How was that there, But so I just kind of got a thought that our likes and our dislikes we probably bring in to this lifetime, and probably the likes and the dislikes probably have the same weight. And maybe we bring into this like our likes intentionally, and we also bring in our dislikes intentionally so we can encounter both and grow from them. You know what I mean? Like uh you know why we if we there's probably a lot of dislikes I brought into this lifetime that vibrationally are attracted to me, same as a like because of the energetic field of it, and then it's to work through and process and learn. And but yeah, good topic, Barbara, thank you. And
Oh, thank you. And what you just shared sounds very inspiring. So I like that. Thanks, Chels. And
Oh,
yeah,
oh, what's
thanks
the matter?
everybody. Looks like
Uh-oh.
Willie's going crazy.
Oh, he's throwing up. Oh my
Oh
God. Oh,
no.
baby, baby,
Well, it's
baby.
probably time to
Oh,
sign off anyway. So
sorry.
thanks everybody. Great topic today.
Oh my God.
Where's
And
Willie?
we'll see you next week on Talks on Tuesdays. Thanks.
Shit.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks everybody.